Well, hello, my YouTube friend. I hope everybody's doing well. I think there's one person here. Forgive me, I haven't done live in forever, so I forget half of this. I'm trying to figure out how to turn on the chat and everything and see what's going on. So just give me a minute while I play around a bit. I hope it's not too distracting. Anyway, happy Tuesday. I hope you're doing good. I hope your market is your accounts are hitting new highs. At least mine, even with Oaklow that's getting beat up today, seems like the overall market is doing just fine. Interesting news today. I mean, Google started to collapse, which I think created a good opportunity. Uh, I don't know if you guys. Where is the? Let's see. Does this do it? Green screen. I don't want a green screen. Again, forgive me. Well, I try to figure out how to pull up the chat. This is so annoying. There is. Um. Anyway, so let's see how because I'd like to be able to answer questions. Let's see. There. No, don't want to. Anyway, I hope you guys are all good. Curious. Is there anything you've been watching? Anybody? I don't even know how to tell if there's a comment in the comment section. Every time I'm hitting the chat thing, community moderation on live chat on participation on. All right. Well, maybe if somebody wants to make a chat in the comment section, I'll see if it pops up. Um, Nothing too interesting going on other than the markets have behaving great. I mean, I'm really excited about what's been going on. I don't know if you guys have been able to tune into the video that I've been doing with my son. Um, Not because I could care less if the account goes up or down. I mean, of course, ego reasons, you always want to see things go up, but in reality, I really just want to see him get excited about markets and pay attention a little bit and keep on top of things. So the only reason I'm kind of glad the market's been going up is I think there's a higher likelihood that he'll have interest in learning about finance if the account does well. Oh, look, yeah, it does work. So the chat does work. Perfect. Um, it's not so much that I let's see if I can said hi. How do I? Anyway, I'll see if I can figure it out. Um, but like I said, I just hope that that gets him interest in being involved in learning about finance. Where if the account started to lose, I'm sure that he would not be so excited about it or have the interest the way that he is since it's been doing well. And the other thing is, maybe I shouldn't be teaching him about options, but we did have a discussion off screen afterwards where I explained to him that the stocks that I had chosen they're somewhat inappropriate. What I mean by that is they are super gambling type of companies. They are not companies I would really suggest somebody just invest in. Uh, I would rather people look to invest in Amazon or Google or Meta or Chevron, Starbucks, just normal companies than the things that we put in his account that have really big ups and downs and could go out of business and really be worthless. But at 14 years old and it being what I would think of as a small account, it's okay to take those types of risks. If somebody gets older, then maybe they shouldn't be taking those types of risks. Um, that's why I chosen those companies. But the swings are ridiculous to be putting in a significant portion of somebody's portfolio. So the other thing is I'm teaching him about options, which at 14 years old might be a little ahead of things, but I really enjoy options trading as much as I enjoy just being invested in the markets. I find that selling cash secured puts is a great way to get a really good return on, if it's literally cash, you get a really good return on your cash. And if you get exercised, it should be companies that you're happy to buy at the prices that you're putting in anyway. I talk with my buddy about it because he likes to trade and he gets a little, he doesn't have the patience in a lot of ways to sit things out and just hold. So if the market starts to go against him, he may cover. Well, I try to explain if you're using covered calls or cash secured puts before you put the trades on, you really should think it through and be committed to it. If you're looking at a specific stock and you're willing to buy it at X, whatever X is, if it gets below X and continues to go lower, you should be okay with that. You shouldn't have sold the put to begin with if you weren't okay buying that company at the price you were willing to buy it at, if that makes sense. Um, and what happens, at least with him, is it drops below a level, or even the opposite. If he's selling a covered call, it gets above the covered call price, and now he's changing his mind and doesn't really want to be short the call. The same thing, if you want to trade options, you have to think it through, and you really need to be committed about, I'm happy to sell the stock if it goes above my call strike, or I'm happy to buy it if it goes below my put strike. Now, that being said, there are strategies of how to roll out of those if you want to change them. So let's pretend like, I'll use Oracle just because I know where it's been trading because I've been watching it. And let's say you sold a $280 put, and today it's below $280, at least last that I looked. I don't have the quotes next to me. And you're having second thoughts, thinking, geez, I'm not sure I really want to buy it at 280. Maybe I'd be able to buy it lower. Before just covering that cash secured put, you can roll it by looking out a couple of weeks and looking at a lower strike price. So, for example, maybe you could drop to the 260 put, or maybe a 255 put if you look another 2 or 3 weeks out. But what you want to be able to do is, if the put that's expiring now or this week is trading, I'm totally making it up, so please don't like hold me to the numbers. But if it's trading $8, let's say, or $7 is probably more realistic. The put that you're selling for the to roll out into should also be trading at $7. So if you're going down to a 260 strike price, you don't want to be taking a loss to go to the lower strike price. But if you extend the timeline and go to that lower strike price, you can then actually lower your purchase price. And if originally you got $3 to sell that put, and now it's at 7, so theoretically you're taking a $400 loss, but you're selling a put for $7 that's 2 or 3 weeks out and lowering your purchase price if it goes below that level. Well, you're still technically receiving those original $300 from selling it from $3 originally. Does that make sense? So essentially, you sold a put for $3, it started to go against it, and you thought, geez, I don't really want to buy it at 280, especially because it looks like it could go lower from here. So when you cover that put and you pay $7, losing $400, if you sell the further output for the same $7, thus kind of breaking even on buying at 7 and selling at 7, the original $3 that you got could be profit if that ends up expiring without exercising that put. And it lowers your purchase price. So if you go 2 weeks further out and you're able to sell a 260 put instead of a 270 put, if you get assigned, you're now buying it at 260 instead of the 270 of the original, or 280. Sorry if I'm getting the numbers messed up a bit. But hopefully that all makes sense and people understand it. But that is how you can roll through options to be able to try to continue to make them profitable no matter what. Just covering them simply because you're frustrated or annoyed because the market didn't behave the way you were hoping it would is probably not the best decision. Um, Obviously, anybody's able to do anything. I'm going to try this again and see if there's a way. How do I respond? Add as a mod or put time at hide user from channel. I don't want to do that. So what if I do this? No. Sorry, I'm learning this again. Chat filters, top messages, all messages. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy. Okay, so I'm not supposed to share who I am. Anyway, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Kahn. This is Investing with Adam K. This is the first live I've done in forever. I am going to try to stick with Tuesdays during the day. I don't expect anybody to really show today, so no big deal if there's really no back and forth. I might play with it just with my brother or something one day to try to figure out how to respond because this is driving. Oh, there we go. There we go. Wait, maybe I still can't. It's just telling me you're a top fan. Whatever. Add Q and A. Try it. All right. Answer. Answers will appear as chats. Hello. I'm just typing stuff to see if this works. No, it's not working. Return. Done. Anyway, sorry that I'm playing with it a bit as I'm learning the how to use it. So that's how I would use the options and how I would try to work it with people. I really don't advise just simply drag here. Oh, okay. I really don't advise to just get out of a trade if drag here. Where is there? Where's the garbage? This is so annoying. I don't really advise to just get out of trades when you get frustrated with them. You have to deal with it and work through it. That being said, if you've been watching, the three stocks that we've been trading in his account are Soundhound, LAC, as well as what was the last one again? Soundhound, LAC, Open Door. And that's why I say all three of those are pretty high risk stocks that probably aren't the greatest things to be trading for a regular account. Um, Google today gave a great opportunity to pick some up. I don't know if you guys were watching that or not, but it dropped when the news came out that, I think ChatGPT is going in with somebody else and Apple is going to double down with Google, which I think is actually good news. So I found it almost humorous that the stock fell off. Um, but that is what happened. So little surprised by that. I saw it as an opportunity and I bought a few shares. Those of you keeping an eye on HIMS, it's having a tough ish day today, getting back down around $50, um, which is what it is. I mean, it still hasn't broken out of the range to the downside. So I guess it'll just do whatever it does. And then Amazon is finally having a super strong day, which I think has finally gotten to a level that looks super attractive to me. I think if you're able to buy Amazon around $220 and if possible even lower than that, I think that's a great opportunity. I'm almost hoping that when earnings come around, that maybe AWS isn't as strong as people were hoping, and it doesn't do so great, creating an even better opportunity. But I guess we'll have to wait for earnings to come out and see how it does, because hard to know. But that's what I'm really hoping is that things come out lousy, the stock sells off, and you get a better, even better opportunity. I know that Walmart recently worked some deal with ChatGPT. Hopefully, that's one of the things they discuss that starts becoming negative news on Amazon, making the stock go down. And I think Amazon's one of the greatest companies there is. So if the stock falls after earnings, I see that as an opportunity to add on at a cheaper price. I've owned it for a long time. It's my second largest holding in my set it and forget it account, but it's one of my favorite companies. So if I can add on, if it actually got below 200, I would be excited to add on to Amazon down there. Like I said, I even think where it is now, around $220, is really reasonable. So hopefully it gets there and we do well from there. Anyway, I see a couple of you. Let's see what we can do here. Drag here. Why is it not? Oop, I thought I had it for a second. Oh, there we go. That got rid of that. So how do I respond to you? User and time. Forgive me, since there's only a couple of you, if any. I figure it's an opportunity for me to kind of play a bit and see why I can't get why I'm having a trouble finding how to respond to the chats. If I click, if I do that, it just is going to cut it off. Hello, Asma. I don't know. I'm such an old fart. It's terrible. And anybody watching this later on, forgive me that I'm such an old fart. It just is. Like, you get old and you can't figure out technology. I'll have to YouTube it to see how to actually do this on YouTube, how to respond to people's chats. And I used to be able to. What if I hit the little top fans button? That puts her there, but how do I respond? Let's see. Got it. Okay, that doesn't help. I don't know. So confusing. So I apologize. Like, if you guys have questions, I guess I can verbally answer them, but I can't really write in the chat section, or at least I can't figure out how to. So last I looked, Nasdaq and S&P were down a bit. The Dow was up a ton. I think a lot of that has to do with GM, who crushed earnings and actually did really well in terms of guidance. Which, the stock was, last I looked, at $67 a share, which is phenomenal, especially doing where it was coming from and having such a tough run. Hi, Lahua. Hope you're doing well, Pop. Um, so it's cool to see GM having such a strong day. You know, car companies have been struggling for a while, all of them. GM is just fine. Ford is just fine. To me, Tesla is super overpriced, but it is what it is, and people love it anyway. So maybe the stock continues. My concern with Tesla is that now that those government subsidies are done, that you're going to see the sales fall off. So really, he better get the robo taxis and the robots and all the other things that he's promising moving along, or it's going to be lots of problems going forward. That being said, I mean, they make a great car. Um, our household is two Teslas, but I'm not interested in buying the stock. I just like the cars. And quite honestly, when my son gets old enough, it's probably what we consider for him as well. I don't know. I see there's only a few of you on here, but what do you guys think of Tesla stock? Are you like me? Do you think that the stock price is super high? Do you think it's reasonable? I just kind of wonder. It seems overpriced for what it actually is and for the earnings that they have. The things I like, I mean, you guys who watch the channel know. I mean, I think Conagra's cheap. I think Target is really cheap, despite being up today. I've loved Target for a long time. I was very excited to see United Healthcare. I really don't watch United Health too closely. I just thought it was such a bargain, and I saw this morning it was up a good amount. I don't know if it is still higher today, but I still think United Health, if it's got a three as the first digit, is still super inexpensive. To me, it's like a CrowdStrike moment. And I think in another 12 months, it could be pushing new highs. I know they have earnings coming out soon, and I'm guessing their earnings will be just fine. If the Department of Justice overhang finally subsides and disappears, I think you could be really shocked to see how United Healthcare could just go right back up to the old highs and be quite a shock. Like I said, just like CrowdStrike, when they had that outage and the stock collapsed and everybody just was so negative on it. The reality is, my brother had a really good comment about that I thought was very smart. If the stock falls that far that fast because they had a glitch in the system, it tells you how much these companies really need their services. So I think that shows how valuable CrowdStrike is, not how much it's going to do poorly in time. And I think CrowdStrike as well as Palo Alto Networks are both the two top in the field, and they don't really compete with each other. They're a little bit different, but I think those are companies you want to own. Is you want to own cybersecurity because it's going to be an issue going forward, and those are the two top names in that industry. So why would you not want to be invested in them at least to some degree? Now, as always, I'm going to say my little disclaimer, especially since we've got two people watching, and if anybody watches in the future, this is not financial advice. Please, by all means, I only do these videos for entertainment purposes only. You need to do your own research for making financial decisions and reach out to a financial advisor. You should not be listening to me, and God forbid, or anybody on YouTube for that matter. I saw this guy the other day. What a freaking moron. I shut it off. I canceled like any views of any other videos that come up, and this is the stuff that I hate on YouTube that really drives me nuts. He's talking about some stock that is up $2 that he owns 15,000 shares of, going on and on about how you can make over 30,000. Shut up, buddy. Like, why would you be selling on people on promises of something that isn't realistic? Hey, Kevin, are you considering to buy bonds now since you're moving up and stocks and metals look to be topping? Um, hey, Kevin, no, I appreciate the question. And yes and no. I know that's kind of a stupid response, but I'll explain. Now, I definitely feel that way about metals. And the funny thing is, I actually went to my wife and told me anything that you have in gold that you don't wear, let's scrap it and sell it. Like, the prices were really high. I also was fortunate enough, I bought some gold coins back in the late 90s when it was really cheap. And I felt the same way. It got in the news so much that I felt like it's gotten a little ahead of itself. And look, maybe it keeps going. That's why I give that little disclaimer. I don't want to make a judgment. I know there are people who love that stuff. I just think, like you, it looks a little toppy. Stocks, I think, still have a ways to go. Just my opinion. I'm not like, I don't want anyone to like, you're welcome to a different opinion on it. And I tend not to buy bonds just because they're too boring for me. But I agree with the direction. As a little bit of disclaimer, I do mortgages too. And what I've noticed is the last time when the Fed cut, the 10-year shot up in terms of yield, down in price, up in yield right as soon as they started cutting. Well, this time when they cut at the last meeting, the market started to do the same thing for a couple of days, and then it didn't. And ever since, yeah, the prices have been going up and the yields have been going down. Today, I noticed that the yield on the 10-year was under 4%. And I think that trend probably continues. Like, I think the economy is probably slowing a bit, the rates are probably legitimately coming down and the prices are probably going up. What I tend to do is I will buy a stock like Target, because if I can get a 5% yield in a stock that I'm comfortable that they can make those payments, I don't mind taking the risk that the stock could go lower, because I really tend not to get out of companies like that and I'll hold them for 10 or 20 years. And I would rather own Target at a 5% yield than lock myself into a 10-year treasury at high threes or low fours, because I think at least then I have the potential that I could get lucky and either the stock price could go up, but on top of that, that each year they tend to raise their dividends. So, and not just Target, there's a lot of companies like that. I just use that as an example, but T. Rowe Price, Prudential, Stanley Black and Decker. I mean, they're all getting 5% or 5% and change. Verizon's getting 6% and change. Conagra, which I've talked about with selling options, they're getting 7%. Pfizer gets 7%. I, Bristol Myers is getting over 5%, possibly 6%. Um, so there's a ton of companies that I use similarly to how others use bonds. I don't know that that's the best for everybody. Also, part of the disclaimer, but a really long answer to your question of, I'm not really buying bonds because what I've been buying are the dividend stocks, even some of the midstream oil companies that are paying in the sevens. I always mix up invert, but I think it's MPLX is paying the 7%, not MLPX, but one of them is paying like 7.6 or whatever. And like I said, maybe the stock price goes down, which offsets those yields, but that's what I tend to do with bonds. But I think your insight as to direction, at least on the bond market, is the same as mine. Metals, I feel the same way. Like today's sell off uh, wouldn't intimidate me if I was thinking of selling to continue to sell. Like, you know what I mean? Um, could you opt in on energy stocks if you could bottom in 20? I, I don't. Chevron is probably my fourth or fifth largest position. I think. Sorry for my stuttering, because The only concern I have about energy stocks is how much it's been in the news, how much they're talking about how much we're going to need them. But I also think the news is correct. Now, e- but big and boring, like I like all the oil companies, and some of them have not really moved a whole lot. I like the yields in a lot of them. I like Nextera Energy, the Florida company, and it's begun to move. I just don't know if, a lot of times when everybody in the media is talking about something, which seems to be what you pick up on as well, that tends to be the end of the run. But forgive me for saying AI because I know everybody, but it sounds like the demand that we're going to have on energy is going to be something that like we can't even comprehend, and we just need more of it. And I can tell from the way that the prices of electric bills are going up that that's probably accurate. So I think the demand is going to continue. I don't think you'll have a difficult time if you're in energy stocks. I do diversify a bit, but the ones I have the most of are Chevron and Xterra Energy. Um, I screwed around with OKLO and got very lucky on it, but that's just stupid, dumb luck of me being cynical about the government and administration. And still am. Look, I've been very fortunate with Intel for the same reason. And part of it is I've gotten older. Like I joke with my brother when I was a kid, I would have watched that stuff on the sideline and been like, that's such BS. It's not right. These guys like they do this stuff and they know the markets are going up. So this time when I saw it happen, I'm like, why do I just look at it in the sidelines and get annoyed? So anything that the government has been investing in, I've been putting a little in too, thinking, they're gonna make it work, and I shouldn't just sit on the sidelines being cynical, like, will they just cheat? Like, well, maybe they do just cheat, but if I have the information, why wouldn't I buy a little bit of the stock as well? Anyway, that just touches because OKLO. I don't know if the Department of Energy. He used to be the CEO, I think, of Liberty or CFO of Liberty Energy, and he was on the board of OKLO along with Sam Altman, if that's his name. So I bought a little bit of the OKLO. The funny thing is, I sold out of a small percentage of it and decided, well, I never bought the Liberty, and he was on the board of it, so I bought a little of that too. But I would just stick with the boring stuff. I think that I think that energy is a good place to be no matter what's going on because it is something we need. So you don't really get hurt on it no matter what. I also think healthcare, the same thing. Part of why I liked United Health so much is a few reasons. One is bad news on great company, and you couldn't have planned it any better, where their earnings weren't great. The CEO left, the original CEO got shot, and they were getting negative press. Forgive that I just say that as analytical and not give an opinion of actual thoughts into it. Then you had the Department of Justice, a second bad quarter, and the stock just got pummeled. Meanwhile, they're like the largest company in the health space who has unbelievable earnings, continues to raise their dividend at something like a 12 or 15% increase year over year for the past 5 years. Like, what a great company, what a great opportunity. And that doesn't come along that often. So I think healthcare. I also and now you have the current administration being tough on healthcare, which hurts all of them as well. But if your timeline is 10 years, I mean, it's hard to imagine that the energy and healthcare and things of that nature just don't continue to chug along and do just fine. To me, like big and boring is the primary focus of most of my investment, and then I take small amounts and do all sorts of other things. I mean, I do include Amazon and Google and Meta in my big and boring, but partially because I was fortunate to get in at good pricing, so they've organically grown into larger positions, not because I would just sock away a bunch in the technology. I, for me personally, the volatility of technology is hard for me to stomach. So I am personally better off with something that doesn't move a whole lot than the things that have big swings. Now, I can put what I consider a very small amount of money into long shots. And if they start to do really well, I am able to hold on to them pretty well, which is because I put in a small enough amount of money that I don't worry them so much. But for the most part, really, my goal is just to keep putting away and saving, and I'll do that in big, boring companies. Now, I'm not overly boring. I tend to stay away from Procter and Gamble, but the dividend stocks are the stuff that I would do for the bonds. And yeah, I think energy is a great place. I assume that's what you've been looking at. So I would trust to stay with it. Again, not financial advice, just my opinion. Um, but if you have questions about any specific stock or anything, I'm happy to give my thoughts if it's something I'm familiar with. I'm just glad to see the markets holding up. What I do warn people, and what I think is happening is, the news is talking about how we are in an AI bubble. I think they're right, but I also want to asterisk that. I still think we have another 2 years to go. I think we're in a bubble, but I think we're in the beginning stages. I don't see this as this big scary thing. I see it as an exciting moment because if I'm right, and look, I'm wrong a lot, so good chance I could be wrong. But if I'm right, the most money is typically made at the end when things really go parabolic and when they reverse. So if I go back to the late 90s and try to remember the best I can, because that was 25 years ago, and again, old and brain doesn't work so great, the reality is, with all the dot com and everything else, it has to draw in everybody who doesn't typically invest. And I do not think we're there yet. While I see the analysts and the people on TV getting excited about feeling like we're overvalued, and we probably are, so I don't want to discredit them, it hasn't gotten to the point that the secretaries, the waiters, the waitresses, the Uber drivers, the every normal person you can think of hasn't jumped in where they get overly excited. And what I think that takes is the people who are in now getting really lucky and hitting it out of the ballpark. But to be fair, if they don't use that as an opportunity to get out, it does reverse at some point. Again, I think we could have another 2 years going into it. And I think it might correlate with when the next election is and when administration changes and everything else. What I'd like to see is the AI stuff get really nutty. I would like to see a scenario, and I don't, it's not what I really like, so the words aren't correct. It's more about if my analysis is right when I say it that way, just as a little disclaimer, because what would be better for everybody is just a normal, like if we had a 5 or 10% correction right now, that would be great and we could just chug along as we are. I don't think that's what's going on. I think we will have this parabolic bubble, and then we'll have the hard landing that Powell talked about 3 years ago. But I think it's just going to take longer and happen later down the road. So over the next 2 years, you need the people that are already invested to do exceptionally well so that they start bragging about how well they've done, which then sucks in everybody else. And when everybody else starts coming in and the money goes in that typically doesn't get invested in the market, really pushing those levels further than before, that's where I would be looking to get out and sit on the sidelines and wait for it to correct. Um, I think that really takes time to play out. And I constantly listen to hear if I hear people who don't typically talk about markets start talking about it. And what I hope for is there become a bunch of new names of AI companies that none of us have any knowledge of that have great stories, but no earnings. Oklo is a great example. It has no earnings, it loses money, and the thing went from $20 to 190 at the top. It's almost comical. And maybe they'll become something, and the market cap's small enough that, sure. But anyway, company not making money, shooting up to, you know, 10 times what its original market cap is. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Um, what do I think of MicroStrategy? And if you could, I I love MicroStrategy. Um, he kind of drives me nuts sometimes because he's become his biggest self promoter. Um, when I heard him talking about Bitcoin and everything else a while back, and the way that he was a real believer, he kind of sold me on it. I think Michael Saylor is a really smart guy. I am a believer in Bitcoin as well. I really like how they maximize the strategy of selling bonds to be able to buy more Bitcoin and become the largest holder. My concern is in general, now they have no plans of selling any, but if somebody owns too much of the market, it it's very hard for them to liquidate. Like whatever they do, who are the buyers that are coming in at the higher prices to buy it if you own all of it? Like nobody's going to care. Um, I do think we're going to some form of blockchain. I do think at this point that Bitcoin has established itself as something, whether it's the store of value, whether it'll be the historical value, or whatever it becomes. It does bother me that the pricing looks like it's kind of petered out prematurely, for lack of a better word. Um, but yes, I think by next year it could be making new highs. Again, I'm a little surprised that Bitcoin has stalled out, especially the way that gold went. And with the nervousness and everything else, the only thing that bothers me about Bitcoin is it's supposed to be a counterintuitive, like it's supposed to move the opposite of the markets. As stocks fall, it would be logical that Bitcoin should go higher. That doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like directly correlated where it's almost just a risk asset. And that's the only thing that kind of bothers me about Bitcoin. It should be something that people are running to as a safe haven. So on stock down days, in my mind, it should be going up and vice versa. And it doesn't seem to really act that way, which bothers me in general, that if we have a correction at some point, that it could be involved in it. But deep down, like I love Bitcoin, but the way that I mean, I have a little bit of Bitcoin, and I am one of those people. I'll share how crazy and how my own version of conspiracy theory. Now, I think things just happen because they happen. I don't think anybody's like doing things to cause this. I don't think that. Sorry. I don't think that the governments are manipulating this or that to cause. But I do think that naturally we're going to progress to a digital society. I really believe in self custody. That's the only thing I don't like about MicroStrategy. I think the value of Bitcoin is being able to own it kind of like you own cash and putting it off chain, like taking it and putting it on a thumb drive and putting it in a safe deposit box, or burying it in the sand at the ocean where nobody else can get to it. Like to me, that's what I really love about the digital currencies, is being able to like take it away, get it offline where nobody has it, and have something a little bit hidden, which are, I guess, what the gold bugs and the other, the ones who believe in that stuff kind of see value in. Because as we go digital, the ability to know what you're spending on, where you're spending on, it's not just marketing and advertising. I saw recently, and forgive me because it was some YouTube video, so I'm not 100% sure about the accuracy, but I guess people in Canada who had donated to something kind of got shut off. So I do have a bit of a concern about the control aspects of whomever if we eventually go 100% digital, which is where I think we go. And I think at some point, paper money will actually be illegal. They'll give some sort of time frame that you can deposit in the banks, and then everything will be digital, and it'll be out of convenience. But the reality is, there becomes that movie Paranoid, The Running Man, and some of the others where you do start to worry if it's all in that aspect. If I vote for the wrong candidates, like, do you get shut off simply because now you're seen as an outlier or anything else? I don't really think I'm that paranoid, but maybe I am. But back to the micro strategy in Bitcoin, it's why I see the value of self custody of something outside of being on chain is having a value. But I also think there'll be zillions of conveniences about it. I mean, collecting taxes will be unbelievably simple and in a way that we won't see as a negative potentially. And they won't have to worry about who you're hiring, what they're doing, what you're spending. It can just be transactional that if you spend X, it gets taxed a couple of pennies. Now, maybe they take advantage or however it works, but I just see tons of benefits of being able to go digital and the accountability being like on the chain and really easy to take to deal with things. I just see the convenience. So my wife and I went to China last summer. She's Chinese, so not that anybody cares. But we also went to Japan and China and other places. They have become so digital that nobody takes cash. Like cash does still exist, and they used to be like a cash society. And Japan is even becoming more digital, even though people say you need cash. You don't, but maybe you do for some small places. When I tell you now, I don't want this to be heard wrong because there are so few homeless in China, but her dad and I and are walking and my wife and somebody on the street who I assume was homeless, but she was dressed nice enough, holds up a QR code. Now, when you go places and you pay for things that is just a QR code, whether you show your QR code and they zap it or vice versa, but it's all on WeChat or Alipay or one of those, and it's super convenient. And I kind of look at her dad and I'm like, why is she showing me like what she's selling me? And he didn't laugh, but when I tell the story, he kind of laughs and he's like, no, she's asking for money. Even the people who are homeless begging for money, and I only saw one. That's why I don't want to overstate it like there were a whole bunch of homeless because there aren't. But even somebody begging for money is asking for digital. It is not cash. They don't have a little thing out where you put money in. Even if you go to like night markets or little vendors or whatever else, there is no such thing. I'm sure you could about pulling out money from your pocket and paying. Now, it's unbelievably convenient. When I was in China, I didn't have my wallet. Like I left the house with my phone. You don't need anything else. And you have a record of everything you bought, where you went. Like it's amazing. And you go to the airport, you use it to check in and check out and trains and whatever else. And you just kind of touch your phone to the thing, it automatically zaps and you're charged with it. It's awesome, but I do worry about the negative things that could come along with that as well. Like, the funny thing is, China's a communist country, and people have this image of whatever we think about them watching whatever they do, and I think the U.S. is much more likely to care about the things we do than China. Like, they kind of have a better attitude about it. They don't like they like their government. They think they do great things, and they all support it. So it just is a little bit different. Here, I do worry about that negative aspect, but I also think the conveniences and how well going digital works is why I think eventually we will become a digital society. Hello, Gabrielle. Hope you're having a good day. It's why I think we will go digital, but I also think there's huge value. Super long answer about MicroStrategy and self custody of your own crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or whatever you believe in, and having that on a thumb drive, not on a computer, thrown in a closet or a safe deposit box, out of anybody's hands, so that if you ever have an emergency, it's something separate that's just not you can leave to your kids or your grandkids or whatever you do by just giving them those stupid little things. And I think that stuff's kind of fun and futuristic and interesting too, which might be part of my enjoyment of it. But Yes, I think MicroStrategy could have a huge run. I think you just need Bitcoin to kind of catch itself. I was a little surprised when Bitcoin was making new highs that MicroStrategy wasn't rallying with it. So it does show you that they can diverge from each other and not make. Did it catch itself? Uh oh. Did she cut us off? Oh, no. Sorry about that. The phone rang, which cut it off for a second. Anyway, it bothered me that they kind of diverged from each other when Bitcoin was making highs that MicroStrategy wasn't. But I think no matter what happens with Bitcoin, I do think MicroStrategies can start to rally again. I think under 300 was a really good opportunity. Um, so yeah, I do like them, and I think they could easily make new highs next year. But I guess we'll see. I also like Coinbase. Same thing. Like I think Coinbase could end up becoming the equivalent of the New York Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq. Like if we go blockchain, I don't know how much of it just goes through Coinbase and what kind of deals they're working with the government and what they end up becoming. I know Robinhood's getting in line with some of that as well and being a part of it, but it's all above my head in terms of understanding it. I wish I understood blockchain a little bit better. But I was never great with that stuff to begin with. I was not, computers were not something, one of my strong suits, and coding and understanding that stuff is definitely not a strong suit. But I think that stuff is so like, I do think that's our future. And I think it's like some of those movies. I remember that. I don't know, was it called Time or something, where they had how long they were going to live on this little, anyway, like, yeah, I think all that stuff could end up happening. Sorry, just making sure this hadn't died. Um, so I don't know. You guys can let me know. Do you guys think that the blockchain and the cryptos are going to be an integral part of our lives, or do you think it's all silly and nonsense and just not important? Forgive me, I have my coffee. I got a new, so I drink a ton of coffee, and I kind of, there are a few of these guys. Graham Stephan talks about it all the time. I'm not about to spend $5-7 for Starbucks because I drink 3 or 4 cups a day most days. So I hate the Keurig. It never does a good job. So I got an espresso, and I was such a fan of it just because it's better than the Keurig. And then finally, my wife said to me, with how much coffee you drink, you should really, step up the thing a little bit more, and we'll get a fully automated one that, can make cappuccino and this and that and the other. So we order it, and it comes, and it is not fully automated. So I am kind of learning how to be a barista. As much as I keep joking, I wasn't going to. I was just going to return it because we got it from Costco and they're great at the returns. But I was like, screw it. I made a couple of cups and the coffee came out phenomenal. So now I am actually taking the time to try to learn about this stuff to figure it all out. So Kevin, to your question, what has been my best performing stock this year? By by far, but it is not something I would really recommend to people, is OKLO, and I sure wouldn't buy it up here. Like I don't know if people heard earlier when the guy got nominated to the Department of Energy, who used to be on their board. My attitude was, well, if the guy in the department who runs is the Secretary of Department of Energy was on the board of this energy company, what are the odds that it gets some favorable things going its way and does really well? So I bought it for $21 a share. I bought a decent position in it. I mean, I'd like to say I probably bought more than I should have in some ways, and I've been fortunate enough that uh, I've sold calls that didn't get taken on it that have lowered my cost basis on top of it. So from 21, I'm probably into it for about $15. And I recently sold yesterday or the day before, sold 2 calls in it at the 260 strike price for 2028. and I got 60 some odd, almost $70 per option. So it was like, well, I'm going to get triple what I paid for the stock. And my worst case scenario is it just keeps going and blows through my strike price, and I end up selling it for way. But I wouldn't count that one. That is just dumb luck. I mean, outside of that, my like the things I invest in typically are big and boring. My biggest holding is Meta, which happened organically. When it fell off pretty hard, I bought it. But then it's Amazon, Google, and Chevron and Starbucks. And then I built a decent position in United Health when it fell as well. So I guess United Health was. I'd have to take a look to see what has done, but I'm guessing United Health is probably my best performer if I ignore OKLO for this year. Um, I never really factor the goofy stuff that's done well. I mean, especially because sometimes you really have to get lucky with it. So, for example, my wife's retirement account, she doesn't pay any attention to any of this stuff. And my attitude was, it's kind of stuff that's out of sight, out of mind. So I put it in all totally risky, stupid. Either they go to zero or we get really lucky, like Peloton and things like that. I lost the password, had no idea what we owned. Well, fortunately, one of the things I bought was Robinhood. And when I finally took the time to find the password, like really, the only thing I knew in the account was Peloton. When I finally was like, you know what, let's just take a look and see how it had done. Uh, we had Peloton, which had done terrible. She had Neo, which had also done terrible. But she had Robinhood, Uber, and what was the other? There was one other in there. You can see how often I look at it, but it had just Shopify, and the three of those, like the purchase price on Robinhood was $12 and change a share, but part of still having it when it's now up where it is, didn't have the password, didn't even know it was in the account, and wasn't even watching it. My guess is if it was in my trading account, which is about the only thing I actually watch and pay attention to, there is no way I would have held it from $12 to where it went. So I don't know if you watch the videos that I do too often, but I have three separate accounts that I keep. And the one that I primarily invest in, I refer to it as my set it and forget it account because I buy what I think are great companies. It is an old fashioned type of an account where it doesn't have online trading. I can't make any changes to it. Like if I want money out of the account, you can't go onto the computer and request a check. You can't do anything like that. Now, you can go online and see it. It's super delayed. Um, and I don't even check it that often because my goal is to own these stocks for 5 or 10 years, and my real goal is it gets left to my son, and it's nothing that I ever need. But I sort of do that on purpose to keep it away from me. Then I have a smaller account that is primarily dividend stocks that I barely pay attention to. And then I have an account that's much smaller that I trade actively that I love. It's like I used to be a commodities trader at the floor of the exchange. This is my passion. It's what I like to do. And this way, I don't worry. If that account goes to zero, as much as I'd be pissed and annoyed at myself, it's not going to impact our lives. It's not going to change anything. And in the meantime, if I want to take a shot on LAC and buy 500 shares, like I'm welcome to do it in that account. I can do like it just gives me access to trade as crazy as I want and do whatever I want to do. Um, I find that the only thing I regret with the set it and forget it account is I'd like an ability to sell puts to get into things because I do think cash secured puts is a great strategy for buying the things you want to buy, especially because if it never gets to the price where you want to buy it, at least you're collecting some money in the meantime. And it helps to keep a discipline of this is where I want to buy something and I'm willing to pay X. So here it is. But
But outside of that, I really like my trading account, and just I know my personality. As much as I'm attracted to things that really fly around, what I've been crushing it on is Canagra, which goes nowhere. Um, but I've done the math. I've talked about it in the videos a whole bunch. So Canagra's trading like $18 to $20 a share on average lately. When I run the numbers, if you make 15 cents a month on one contract, whether that's a call or a put, that 15 cents ends up being over 9% return. Depending on where the stock is, it's either 10% and change or it's like 9% and change. That's really good return. If I can sell a put and get 15 cents and I'm making 9%, that's great. Well, same thing on the call side of things. So if I can sell one put, getting my 9%, and I can sell one call and get 15 cents there and get 9%. If the call doesn't get taken and I also get a dividend check, well, Canagra's paying over 7% return. All of a sudden, my 9% went to 18% for the one call and the one put. And if nothing gets exercised over a year, I'd be getting another 7%. So I'm at 25% return in Canagra, which is the most boring stock in the world and goes nowhere. And it moves slow enough that I'm able to adjust as I'm getting assigned shares or I'm getting shares taken away, which has gotten me more aggressive on the calls and the puts that I'm able to sell. And what I've noticed is most of the time I can get my 15 cents in 2 weeks, not a month. So it blows those numbers out of the park. And I don't get stressed because Conagra might move 20, 30 cents in a day, and I don't stress about these huge ups and downs. Like I did videos on, I've been trading hymns, and the moves are extreme and it's very emotional. Where Conagra, I can do a video and I'm not super worried what's going on with Conagra. Now, feel free to put in the comments, oh my God, it collapsed, something came out, there was a disease, and the stock fell 30%. But for the most part, like, maybe it's up or down 50 cents on a really extreme day, but it's kind of funny that I've been able to generate the returns on something that I think of like probably the most boring stock I can think of, which has got me to start doing it with now Pfizer and Verizon and Bristol Myers. And I even started a small position in BP. And I'm really enjoying these stocks that go nowhere, recognizing that, geez, if I make 10 cents a week or 15 cents a week on these very low volatility companies, it really adds up to a nice return on investment without causing a whole lot of stress. And if I diversify it to like 6 or 8 different companies, I don't work like if one of them just sucks, because here's the risk that you have in the negativity. If one just starts drifting lower, I'll use Conagra since I talked about it. Let's say over the next year, it just keeps slowly drifting lower. And yes, I'm able to pick up my 15 cents and whatever else. But the next thing I know, I've been assigned a whole bunch more shares and it's trading $9 a share. Well, it becomes really difficult to sell calls at a price that's getting me enough money that justifies, like, if it goes back up, is it a good, like, will I get the yields that I want? Like, by the time it's trading 9, 10, $11, how far out am I going to have to go to sell an 18 call to try to get the appreciation as well as a little bit in terms of the what I think of as a dividend, but the premium in the stock? And you're going to have to go really far out. So the risk is it drifts lower at a pace that's hard to collect enough premium to offset that drifting lower and stay with it. Now, Conagra's moved slow enough that even as it's been drifting lower, I've been able to collect a lot more premium than what the stock has fallen, so it's been just fine. But that is the risk on those, and you just hope that that doesn't happen, or a legitimate correction where everything drops and you're just stuck with a bunch of these boring, crappy companies that you didn't really intend to own. That again, you're now in a position where it's against you enough that it's very hard to sell calls that generate any kind of premium without going out 2 years. So you're just stuck owning this thing you really didn't want to own. So gold took a hit today. Do you think non-yielding assets are a good investment? Well, Gabriel, we talked a little about that earlier. I, only in my paranoid self that it's good to be diversified and have a little bit of everything. But my personal opinion, not financial advice. Like, really, everybody has to have their own opinions about what they think, and I don't want somebody listening to me because I'm wrong enough that I'd hate to be. I hate being wrong for somebody else. I have no issue being wrong for me. Like it happens all the time. If I take a loss or do something the wrong way, it's okay. But no, I don't like gold up here. I think we're overstretched. I think it's getting in the news too much. I just think it's gotten a little ahead of itself. That doesn't necessarily mean it won't have another push. And if it does, it will be like I talked about with equities, where everybody is talking about it and you need to own gold more so than what it looks like now. But I think we've gone a little too far. Thanks, John. Benton, I'll answer your question in a second. I saw it. Um, John, I don't know if you were watching earlier, but I even told my wife any jewelry that she has that she doesn't wear, we grabbed it all and I brought it down to some pawn shop here in Vegas, which I'm sure gives the like I have a theory that Vegas probably gives the worst pricing for gold because we have all the casinos and gamblers who like need the money now. But we took a whole bunch. She had a bunch that she never wears, and I took it down to one of the shops and I sold it to them and I took the cash and we're going on vacation because I just think it's run too far. Um, so Benton, do I invest in other assets like real estate and so? So yes, I do. Um, but along the same lines, if it wasn't for my wife, I would sell our real estate and be in equities, especially at this point. Now, our time we were very lucky. I owned in Chicago before we moved to Vegas. We moved in '05. I was very uncomfortable with the housing market. I panic sold at the right time in Chicago. I told my wife we were going to rent in Vegas, which we did. When the market crashed here, we bought, and then we bought some investment properties as well. Um, but with the prices and the rates and everything where they are today, the math doesn't really make sense to me. Like I wouldn't be buying I would buy my primary if I could afford it. Like I don't really see the home that I live in as an investment. I see the home as I live in is if I want to be in an area, I have a wife, I have a son, and I want the stability and I want the control of if I want to paint the walls purple, it's my house to do whatever I want with it. And I don't worry about whether it goes up and down. I just make sure that I can afford the payments and I'm comfortable with it. An investment property, I run the math on. And if I am not cash flowing with enough coming in that I can cover some repairs and everything else and bumps along the way, that I'm not interested in buying an investment property to lose money on a monthly basis because I just think real estate's going higher. I just me personally, maybe it does. I understand that the leverage can make it worth it because even if it goes up 2 or 3%, if you're only putting 20% down, that 3% is really 15%. Like, I get all of that, but I don't want to take a monthly loss on anything to justify owning something else and being diversified. On top of that, after doing it for the amount of years that I've been doing it, real estate is forgive me, there's a fly going around. Real estate's a pain in the ass. And I don't even mean when you lose a tenant and you have to find another one. I mean, things break, and it might be even something stupid. Like, I hate getting the phone call from the tenants that they need their microwave fixed or they can't change a light bulb or whatever it is. So I joke with my buddy who loves real estate, like, Pfizer has never called me to tell me their air conditioner broke and they need my help. Like they send me that dividend check, they never bother me. They don't call, they don't harass. And at this point, where there are enough companies that I can get a 5% yield, quite honestly, it's hard to get a 5% return on a real estate property unless you find something that is has really good returns for right now. So yes, I have some other things. I also had my own business for a while, but along the same lines as I've gotten older, I don't want the headache either. So it's not a straight answer of no, I don't think it's worth it or yes, I do. It's that as my life has changed, I don't want to be leveraged, and I sure don't want to deal with the tenants. They are a pain in the ass. Now, my wife, on the other hand, does not really understand the stock market. She doesn't want to learn about it. It's intimidating for her, no matter how much I try to talk about it. When I explain dividends, she's like, "Well, is it guaranteed?" And the minute I say it's not guaranteed, like to her with real estate, she can see it, she can touch it, she understands it. Like it just makes more sense to her. So she's way more comfortable with it. But me, I would rather get rid of it and not have to deal with it. The only reason, A, I don't care enough to make it a real fight. And B, one good point she has that I don't know if she's wrong is neither of us really see it getting to the point where it becomes affordable again. What so the lessons that the Fed and the government learned between the great financial crisis and COVID unfortunately means I don't think they're ever going to let it crash. And real estate crashes, I don't want to say create opportunities the way that it's going to sound, but that is the natural ebb and flow of life. As people get overextended, they can't afford it. It causes a crash. The market crashes, and the next generation can afford to come in at reasonable prices. Well, the government sees these ups and downs as too disruptive to the economy, to the world, and everything else. So now they've created these things that help to stop that. So, what I worry is these things that they've done to make the world a safer place are going to make it really hard on next generations. So, I think we may have a 5 or 10% correction coming because the market got ahead of itself. Prices went too high, rates are a little high, it's a little unaffordable. But if it became a real crash, they would step in, they would do quantitative easing. And if that wasn't enough to pull the rates down and get people into the market, they would then do forgiveness because the banks don't want to get stuck with a zillion homes. I think that's an unfortunate, even as a homeowner. I appreciate the protection and everything else, but the long reason for that answer is she's not wrong in that by having the rentals, we give our son a position where we'll be able to help him to get a home. Like we can take one of the rentals and take it off the market. We got into them when rates were in the threes, so it can be super affordable for him. But that's just my own selfishness and stuff like that. But that's the only thing of value that I really see in real estate where it is right now. And again, if somebody's buying a primary residence, I don't see it as investment. I kind of feel the way that some do, that I see it as a liability because of the expenses that come with it, the repairs, the taxes. I mean, taxes and insurance, I kind of look at similar to rent or whatever else, but the things you just don't expect, the roof thing, or you know we're getting new furniture for our house and we're redoing the bathrooms and things that if it was a rental we just wouldn't care. Like, what's the difference? It would just be a rental. So when you own a property, your pride of ownership, you start spending on things that are unnecessary. I enjoy it, it's all okay, but when the question is, I'm guessing, about more investment and is it worth it, a primary house I really see as a liability, eh, that I'm happy to take on because I enjoy owning my home. But as an investment, I mean, I'd be 100% equities if it was all on me. Outside of, I mean, I have some baseball cards, stuff like that. I'm a collector at heart, um, which is even why I had the medals. I just think it's run too far. So it's like, why would I own them if I think it's run too far? Anyway, if there's only a few of you and I've yapped long enough, if anybody has some last questions, I'm happy to delve into it. Otherwise, I'll probably go watch the close of the markets. For those of you still watching, I am going to try to stick with this Tuesday at like 11 o'clock time frame. It's hard for me. I'm very fortunate that I work for myself and I have a lot of freedoms. So it's very hard for me to keep to a schedule, but I tried to pick a time, even though it's probably not the most popular for YouTube, that typically on a Tuesday, I'm not going to have a whole lot going on. And if I do it during the day, it's not when I'm spending time with my family and everything else. So I am going to try to stick with the Tuesday at 11 o'clock. We are going out of town again. Speaking of owning a home in the car, oh, I'm glad you found it helpful, Kevin. Um, Speaking of owning a home and like we're gonna go to China and look for furniture because it's fun. It's a good excuse to go on a vacation, and I love China. It's cool. Anyway, always feel comfortable putting questions in any of the videos. I watch all the time. I see it pop up. If I don't respond, I just miss something, but I do my best. I'm going to try to stick with the Tuesday thing. Hopefully, even when I'm on vacation, I'm able to. Thank you guys. I appreciate the kind words. Um, and have a great day. I'm sure I'll do a video tomorrow or the next day. Bye bye.